To speak today is a deep and humbling honor. First, it is with much gratitude that I thank the citizens of La Plata for welcoming me and my family to this extraordinary town. In the years since we moved here, your cordiality, generosity, and hospitality have been overwhelming. La Plata is the sort of place people long to call their hometown. Indeed, if I could have chosen a hometown, it'd be La Plata. I don't know how long my family will live here, but we cherish each day that we have the opportunity and look forward to our continued residence. Today is a day of remembrance, a day of both glad and sad thoughts. We remember the fallen, those sons and daughters, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, neighbors and friends that took up the cause of our nation and paid with their lives. This holiday is aimed specifically at those that fell in battle, but I like to remember all that have fought for us. We should use this day to celebrate their lives and the sacrifices of these people. From my own life, I remember the sea stories of my dad and father-in-law, both Cold War vets whose sacrifices secured the peace when nuclear annihilation threatened. I remember Mr. Smiley, my next-door neighbor growing up. Mr. Smiley was the hero of our neighborhood. He took all the little kids for rides on summer evenings in his World War II Jeep. On Memorial Day, he took his scout troop to the National Cemetery in Raleigh, where they placed flags on the graves. I later learned that this gentle man was the sole survivor of his landing craft at Bloody Omaha Beach. I remember my dear friend and fellow scoutmaster, Ike Reiglin. Ike landed at Utah Beach and walked clear to Germany by the winter of '45. I remember my grandfather. He rode with General Blackjack Pershing into Mexico against Pancho Villa, and then was a doughboy in World War I. I remember my wife's grandfather. He was a young Marine officer that held the line at the Battle of Belleau Wood. He earned the Navy Cross, and that was the fight in which the Marine Corps earned all the glory that we are familiar with. I remember from my church, Mr. Loomis Mitchell. He was a B-24 pilot. He flew in the Tolstoy oil raids in Germany, in World War II. I remember my dad's cousin, Sam Lumley. He was a merchant sailor who was torpedoed 3 times by Nazi U-boats in the North Atlantic. I remember my ancestors who fought in the Civil War, fought in the American Revolution. These memories are mine, but I'm sure that as I tell you about my family and friends, you remember your own family and friends and the stories of their lives. This is the story of our nation, citizen soldiers that answer the call, many never to return. Sadness is a natural part of remembrance, but we should also cherish the joys of these lives. War is very grim and a brutal task, but I can tell you that soldiers spend much of their time smiling, joking, laughing, loving, and living their lives victoriously through adversity. War movies do a very poor job of capturing the breadth of the human condition. They far too often focus on the extremes, portraying either a very sanitized or an inhumane view of combat. The reality is that combat is truly a short-term event that comes and goes with the suddenness of a summer thunderstorm. We remember those who've fallen. We should no more sum up their lives by the violence of their last few minutes than we would if they had been killed at home in an unexpected accident. As an Iraq War veteran, my heart brims with emotion on special days such as these. Memories unbidden rise to the forefront of my awareness. I thought that sharing some of these would provide you a glimpse into the lives of a modern soldier. It is for these I speak today. Our society sadly holds aloft celebrities and sports stars as heroes of veneration. I tell you, history will judge us not by the works of those, but instead by the accomplishment of the warriors that fight this very hour for our sustained freedoms in the hope of bringing light to a benighted world. Each day, we mark the passing of veterans that fought the tyrannies of the 20th century. The fruit of prosperity was grown from the trees watered by the blood of their sacrifice. The fastest powers and communist threat were stopped by brave young men and women of previous generations. Their legacy to us consists of the simple imperative to continue the fight and stand for justice in a world besieged by individuals that will stop at nothing to tear down our civilization and replace it with a closed society ruled by terror and a religious police state. I've seen firsthand the fruits of their labors, and we must be committed to prevent its spread. As a Navy Reserve officer, I was mobilized, trained as a U.S. Army Civil Affairs officer, and deployed with the 354th Civil Affairs Brigade to Baghdad, Iraq in 2006. On the streets of Baghdad, I met the real heroes of America, the young, brave, highly professional men and women that have offered themselves, their honor, and indeed their very lives in service to you, the American people. To have walked those streets with these young heroes, it is an experience that deeply marked my soul. War brands men and women with its mark. There is no glory, but instead deep honor, deep commitment, and deep love shared by those that experience combat together. No other experience strips the emotions, lays raw the fears, and binds men together as strongly. So on a day such as this, let me take you on a mission to Iraq. This is the sort of mission I went on, and it so typifies the typical missions that are going on this very hour in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Horn of Africa, Pakistan, all around the world. So every night before a mission, I stayed up late, checking my gear, cleaning my rifle, reloading my magazines, ensuring that all was ready for the morning. Well before dawn, I would rise and shower and dress. I was always aware that this may be my last morning. In fact, we scrawled our names on our gear, our uniform, our boots, because the grim reality was that may be all that remained of us. All told, my gear weighed 95 pounds. This was the boots, the helmet, the armor, the weapons. I welcomed this weight, since I knew it was capable of stopping a sniper's bullet or deadly shrapnel. For me, most missions involve trudging to our headquarters, catching a ride to the helipad at Camp Victory in Baghdad, and flying to a remote base with other members of my civil affairs team. Our team waddled into the choppers, crawled inside, strapped in, and headed to our destination. These flights provided a period of introspection with the roar of the helo blades drowning all out but shouted conversation. Usually, once we arrived, we were met by a convoy team of either civil affairs, scouts, infantry, or military police soldiers. A typical mission was my 5-man civil affairs team spread across 3 or 4 Humvees, crewed by our escorts. Invariably, we were also accompanied by Iraqi civilians who were interpreters, and many times by American civilians who were subject matter experts and accompanied me on trips to factory sites. So soon our small convoy would head out, and 2 events always marked the start of the departure. As we approached the checkpoint leading into the dangerous no man's land that was Baghdad, we would stop to load our weapons. The process of chambering rounds into my pistol and rifle always reminded me that we were playing for keeps. As we rolled through the checkpoint, the truck commander would relay to the sentries that 5 souls were headed outside the wire. I would always say a little prayer, and no matter how worried I was, I always kind of ended it with this very irreverent phrase: God, Lord, preserve us and protect us. We've been drinking whiskey for breakfast. That's from an old bluegrass tune from college, and it always stuck in my mind. So those first 300 yards were always very tense. Whatever nagging concerns I had would soon wash away, however, as we ventured into the great unknown. Within a few minutes, the chatter and joking soon replaced concern. We usually made some grim jokes about the potential harm that may befall us, but the fear could not keep its hold, and the burden of weighing 300 pounds, wearing a helmet, long pants, long sleeves, gloves, and encased in armor on a Baghdad summer soon became my primary irritant. As we drove to the destination, the crackle of the radio, the distant drone of small arms fire, and the occasional explosions punctuated the soundtrack of the mission. You grew so used to these sounds that you only paid attention to them when they were close. On these long drives, I would chat with the Humvee's crews. It was always fascinating to spend time with the young enlisted soldiers and junior officers. Their hopes, dreams, desires were the stuff of our conversation, mostly focused on what they would do when they returned to Germany. The unit I was with was based out of Germany, the United States, or after their stint in the military. Spouses, sweethearts, and kids dominated the conversation. This is the smack talk that soldiers have been talking about ever since Hannibal's time. Of course, also high on the list were the foods we miss, the latest movie or video game from home.